The doctors at St. Jude's Medical Center called it a one-in-a-million miracle. When the daughter of the city's most powerful CEO collapsed on the floor of a crowded cafe, everyone thought she was having a seizure. The manager screamed for an ambulance. The bystanders pulled out their phones. But one waitress, a woman everyone ignored and belittled, saw what the paramedics would have missed. She did something so reckless, so terrifying, that the CEO tried to have her arrested on the spot. But 10 minutes later, that reckless act was the only reason his daughter was still alive. This is the story of Sarah Bennett, and the day she forced the world to finally see her. The mid-morning rush at the Gilded Bean was not for the faint of heart. It was a cacophony of grinding espresso machines, clinking porcelain, and the impatient murmurs of the city's elite. This wasn't just a coffee shop, it was a status symbol located in the heart of the financial district. A single latte here cost more than most people's hourly wage, and the clientele expected perfection. Sarah Bennett wiped down table 4 with a mechanical efficiency, her eyes fixed on the dark mahogany surface. She was 26, but the dark circles under her eyes and the weary set of her shoulders made her look older. Her uniform, a crisp black shirt and a tan apron, was identical to everyone else's, yet somehow she seemed to wear it like armor. "Bennett, move it!" The shout came from the counter. Derek O'Malley, the manager, was snapping his fingers. Derek was a man who believed that loud noises and intimidation were the same thing as leadership. He was short, red-faced, and possessed a hairline that was retreating faster than his patience. Sarah didn't flinch. She finished wiping the table, placed the reserved sign in the center, and walked over to the station. "Yes, Derek?" "Table 6 is complaining about the foam on their cappuccino. It's too dry." "Fix it," Derek spat, thrusting a saucer into her hands. "And fix your hair. A wisp is loose. You look like you just rolled out of a dumpster." "I'll handle it," Sarah said, her voice steady. She had learned long ago that fighting back only gave men like Derek more ammunition. She tucked the stray strand of brown hair behind her ear and took the cup. As she turned, she collided with Tiffany. Tiffany was everything Sarah was not: bubbly, blonde, and ruthlessly ambitious. She was Derek's favorite because she knew exactly how to flirt for tips and how to throw her co-workers under the bus to look good. "Watch it, Gloom Cloud," Tiffany sneered, checking her reflection in the display case. "The Prestons are coming in 5 minutes. Derek said I'm taking their table. You stay in the back. We don't need you depressing the atmosphere when the biggest tipper in the city walks in." Sarah tightened her grip on the tray. "The schedule says I'm on the VIP section today, Tiffany." Tiffany laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, honey. Look at you. Your shoes are scuffed. Your apron has a bleach stain. You really think Adrian Preston wants you serving his daughter? Just stick to bussing tables and try not to be visible." Sarah looked down at her shoes. They were scuffed. She couldn't afford new ones. Her rent had gone up again, and the medical debts from her mother's funeral were still strangling her bank account. She swallowed her pride, a taste that was becoming bitterly familiar. "Fine," Sarah whispered. At 10:15 a.m. sharp, the glass doors swung open. The cafe went silent for a split second. Adrian Preston walked in like he owned the building, which, indirectly, he probably did. The CEO of Preston Dynamics was a titan of industry, a man whose frown could drop stock prices. He was in his 50s, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Sarah's entire life earnings. Beside him was his daughter, Lily Preston. Lily was 22, striking and notoriously fragile. The tabloids loved her. The heiress with the glass heart, they called her. She looked pale today, her skin almost translucent against her cashmere sweater. She held her father's arm, walking with a slight hesitation. "Mr. Preston," "Lily, so wonderful to see you." Derek rushed out from behind the counter, practically tripping over himself. His sycophantic smile was blinding. "We have your usual table ready, private and quiet, just how you like it." "Coffee, black," Adrian grunted, barely looking at him. "And Lily needs something soothing. She's been feeling off all morning." Of course, Derek bowed. "Tiffany will take excellent care of you." Tiffany sashayed over, beaming. "Hi, Mr. Preston. Hi, Lily." "Oh my gosh, I love that scarf. Would you like our signature herbal infusion? It's very calming." "That sounds fine," Lily said softly. Her voice was thin, breathless. From the back of the room, near the dishwashing station, Sarah watched them. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at Lily. She noticed things others didn't. She saw the way Lily's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. She saw the slight, rhythmic flaring of Lily's nostrils, a sign that she was working harder to breathe than she should be. She doesn't look like she needs tea, Sarah thought, a dormant part of her brain waking up. She looks like she's compensating for something. "Bennett!" Derek hissed, appearing at her elbow. "Stop staring. You look like a stalker. Go reorganize the pantry. I don't want you on the floor while they're here." Sarah nodded and turned away, but a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. It was a feeling she hadn't had in 3 years. Not since the day she had walked out of medical school, leaving her dreams and her future behind in a cloud of shame she didn't deserve. She pushed through the swinging doors into the kitchen, trying to shut out the world. But she couldn't shut out the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong. The crash happened 10 minutes later. It wasn't a loud smash of crockery. It was a heavy, dull thud, the sound of a human body hitting the floor. The chatter in the cafe cut off instantly. Then the screaming started. "Lily! Oh my God! Lily!" Sarah dropped the box of napkins she was holding in the pantry. She didn't think. She didn't remember Derek's orders. She sprinted through the kitchen, kicked open the swinging doors, and burst into the dining area. The scene was chaos. Lily Preston was on the floor, convulsing violently. Her expensive cashmere sweater was bunched up, her heels scraping against the polished wood. Adrian Preston was on his knees beside her, his face a mask of sheer terror. "Help her! Someone help her!" Adrian roared, looking around helplessly. "Call 911!" Derek was standing there, frozen, his face pale as a sheet. Tiffany was screaming, her hands covering her mouth, useless. "She's having a seizure!" A customer in a business suit shouted, stepping forward. "Hold her down! Don't let her swallow her tongue!" "No!" Sarah shouted. Her voice rang out with an authority that didn't match her uniform. She pushed past a stunned Derek and slid onto her knees beside Lily. Up close, the situation was far worse than it looked from a distance. Lily wasn't just seizing. Her skin was turning a terrifying shade of grey-blue. Her lips were violet. "Get back!" Adrian barked at Sarah. "What are you doing? Get away from her!" "She's not having a seizure," Sarah said, her voice calm but rapid fire. She placed 2 fingers against Lily's neck. The pulse was there, but it was thready and erratic. "Look at her chest. She's not moving air." "She's choking!" Tiffany shrieked. "She choked on the tea." "No," Sarah said, her eyes scanning Lily's face. "The tea is on the table. She didn't take a sip yet. This is an occlusion." "Derek, get me the first aid kit, now!" Derek blinked, snapping out of his stupor. I don't think we have—" "Get the damn kit!" Sarah roared, turning her head to glare at him. The ferocity in her eyes terrified him into movement. He scrambled toward the back office. The man in the business suit tried to grab Lily's arms. "We have to stop the shaking. Don't touch her." Sarah shoved the man's hand away. "She's hypoxic. Her brain is starving for oxygen. That's causing the spasms. If you hold her down, you'll break her bones." Adrian Preston looked at this waitress, this nobody with a stain on her apron, And for the first time, he saw something other than a servant. He saw focus. "What is happening to my daughter?" Adrian demanded, his voice cracking. Sarah ignored him. She placed her ear against Lily's chest. Silence. No wheeze, no gasp, total obstruction. But it wasn't food. Sarah grabbed Lily's jaw, forcing her mouth open. She grabbed the flashlight from her own keychain, a habit she'd never broken, and shone it down the throat. "Is it an allergy?" Adrian cried. "She's allergic to peanuts." "It's not anaphylaxis," Sarah muttered, her mind racing through the differential diagnoses she used to memorize until 3 a.m. "No hives, no swelling of the lips. The throat looks clear." Then she saw it. It was subtle, almost invisible unless you knew exactly what a normal larynx looked like. The tissue deep in the throat wasn't swollen shut from an allergy. It had collapsed. A flap of tissue, red and angry, had fallen backward, acting like a one-way valve. Every time Lily tried to suck in air, the flap sealed the airway tighter. Epiglottitis? No. Too fast. Retropharyngeal abscess rupture? Then Sarah saw the faint, jagged white scar line on Lily's neck, hidden beneath her hair. A surgical scar. Old. "Mr. Preston," Sarah said, looking up, her eyes locking onto the billionaire's. "Has Lily had neck surgery recently? Maybe for thyroid issues or a cyst?" Adrian blinked, stunned. "Yes. 6 months ago. A minor procedure." "Why?" "It's a laryngeal spasm caused by scar tissue adhesion," Sarah said. It was a condition so rare most EMTs would never see it. The scar tissue just snapped or shifted. It's pinning her epiglottis down. She is mechanically suffocating. Lily's convulsions were slowing down, not because she was getting better, but because she was dying. Her brain was shutting down. "Do something!" Adrian screamed, grabbing Sarah's shoulder. "I need a straw," Sarah commanded. "Not the paper ones. I need a plastic stirrer, a hard one, and a knife." "A knife?" Derek had returned with the dusty first aid box. "Are you crazy? You're going to cut her throat?" "No," Sarah said, grabbing the box. She ripped it open. Band-aids, antiseptic wipes, useless. "She has less than a minute," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "If I wait for the ambulance, she's dead." "You are not cutting my daughter," Adrian yelled, shielding Lily's body. "You're a waitress. You don't know what you're doing." "I was a third-year medical student at Johns Hopkins before I had to leave," Sarah snapped, the secret she had kept buried for 3 years exploding out of her. "I know the anatomy of the neck better than anyone in this room. Now, do you want to wait for the paramedics to declare her dead, or do you want me to save her?" The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the faint, gurgling rattle coming from Lily's throat. Adrian looked at his dying daughter. He looked at Sarah. The desperation in his eyes broke. He stepped back. "Save her." Sarah turned to the table. She grabbed a hard plastic cocktail stirrer from a nearby glass. She grabbed a steak knife from the silverware roll. "Alcohol!" Sarah yelled. The bartender, watching from across the room, grabbed a bottle of high-proof vodka and ran over, splashing it over Sarah's hands and the makeshift tools. "Hold her head steady," Sarah ordered Adrian. "Do not let her move even a millimeter." Sarah positioned the straw. She wasn't going to cut the throat from the outside. That was Hollywood nonsense and would kill her with bleeding. She was going in through the mouth. She had to leverage the straw past the tongue, hook the collapsing tissue, and physically pry the airway open from the inside. It was a maneuver called a jaw thrust airway leverage, but usually you used a laryngoscope and forceps. Sarah had a cocktail stirrer and a butter knife. She forced Lily's mouth open wider. She slid the stirrer in, deep, past the gag reflex point, Lily bucked, her body fighting instinctively. "Hold her!" Sarah gritted her teeth. She felt the obstruction, the soft, spongy resistance of the displaced tissue. "Come on," Sarah prayed. "Just move. Just a little." She applied pressure. It was risky. If she pushed too hard, she'd puncture the esophagus. If she slipped, she'd tear the vocal cords permanently. "What is she doing?" Tiffany whispered loudly. "She's killing her." Sarah ignored the noise. She closed her eyes for a split second, relying on tactile sensation alone. She felt the ridge of the cartilage. She hooked the stirrer behind the flap of skin. She torqued her wrist. Snap. There was a wet, popping sound. Suddenly, a gasp. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. A massive, jagged intake of air rushed into Lily's lungs. Her chest heaved upward. The grey colour in her cheeks instantly flooded with pink. Lily's eyes flew open, wide with panic and confusion. She coughed, a violent, hacking cough, expelling air and mucus. Sarah pulled the stirrer out and immediately rolled Lily onto her side. "Breathe, just breathe, you're okay." The café erupted. Not in applause, but in a collective release of breath. Sarah sat back on her heels, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. She looked at Adrian Preston. The billionaire was weeping, clutching his daughter's hand. Then, the sirens wailed outside. The paramedics rushed in, pushing through the crowd with a stretcher. "What do we have?" the lead paramedic shouted. "Post-obstructive pulmonary edema, likely caused by scar tissue adhesion in the larynx," Sarah said, her voice flat and exhausted. "I performed a manual reduction of the tissue using a lever. Airway is patent now. Vitals are stabilizing." The paramedic stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at the girl in the coffee-stained apron. He looked at the cocktail stirrer on the floor. "You did a what?" the paramedic asked, bewildered. "With a drink stirrer?" "She saved her life," Adrian Preston whispered, looking up. "She saved my Lily." Derek, standing in the corner, looked from the CEO to Sarah. His face wasn't filled with relief. It was filled with fear. And then a dark, calculating look crossed his eyes. He realized that Sarah, the punching bag of the café, had just become the most important person in the room, and Derek didn't like being overshadowed. "She got lucky," Derek suddenly blurted out to the paramedics. "She almost killed her. I told her to stop. She shoved a stick down the customer's throat." Sarah looked at Derek, shock washing over her. "She's unlicensed," Derek continued, sensing an opening to regain control. "She's a liability. Officer," he waved at a policeman who had entered behind the medics. "I want to file a report. This waitress assaulted a customer." The café was now a crime scene, or at least Derek O'Malley was trying very hard to make it look like one. Officer Miller, a burly man with a mustache that had seen better days, looked back and forth between the weeping CEO, the unconscious girl being loaded onto the gurney, and the trembling waitress with vodka-soaked hands. "Let me get this straight," Officer Miller grunted, clicking his pen. "You stuck a foreign object down the victim's throat, without consent?" "She was dying," Sarah pleaded, her voice shaking but her eyes defiant. "Implied consent applies in emergency situations where the patient is incapacitated. It's the Good Samaritan law." "She's not a Samaritan, officer," Derek interjected, his voice rising in a pitch of feigned panic. He stepped closer to the policeman, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Look, Sarah is unstable. She's a dropout. She has a history of erratic behavior. I told her specifically to step away. I told her, 'Sarah, don't touch her. Wait for the professionals.' But she just snapped. She grabbed a knife. I thought she was going to stab the girl." "I grabbed the knife to act as a tongue depressor," Sarah shouted, stepping forward. "Officer, ask the paramedics. Ask them what I told them." But the paramedics were gone, racing Lily Preston to St. Jude's Hospital. Adrian Preston had jumped into the back of the ambulance, not sparing a single backward glance at the café. In his panic, he had forgotten the woman who saved his daughter. He was a father first, a witness second. That left Sarah alone in the shark tank. Tiffany, sensing the shifting tides, decided to ensure her own survival. She didn't want to be associated with the crazy waitress if the billionaire sued the café. "It's true," Tiffany said, her voice trembling with fake tearfulness. Derek screamed at her to stop. We all did. It was terrifying. She just lunged at Miss Preston. It looked so violent. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the gut. She looked at Tiffany, a girl she had covered shifts for, a girl she had helped with homework in the break room. "Tiffany, how can you lie like that?" "I'm not lying," Tiffany sobbed, turning away. "You put a dirty stirrer down her throat." Officer Miller's face hardened. He didn't understand medical terminology. He didn't understand laryngeal spasms. What he saw was a minimum wage worker who had arguably assaulted the daughter of the city's most powerful man, and two witnesses claiming she had disobeyed orders to do it. "Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back," Miller commanded, reaching for his belt. "What? No." Sarah backed away, hitting the counter. "I saved her life. You can't arrest me for saving a life." "You performed an unlicensed medical procedure with non-sterile kitchenware," Miller said, grabbing her wrist. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked shut, a sound that echoed through the silent cafe. "We're detaining you for questioning regarding aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. If that girl dies on the way to the hospital, the charges go up to manslaughter." The customers were still filming. The phones were held high, capturing the moment the hero was treated like a villain. Sarah saw her reflection in the glass of the pastry case, hair messy, apron stained, hands cuffed. Derek crossed his arms, a smirk hiding behind his look of concern. "You're fired, obviously," he muttered as the officer led her past him. "I can't have liabilities like you on my payroll. Don't come back." As Sarah was marched out the front door, the humiliation burned hotter than the midday sun. Passers-by stopped to gawk. The CEO's daughter collapses, and the waitress gets arrested. It was the perfect headline. She was shoved into the back of the patrol car. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable, smelling of stale sweat and sanitizer. As the car pulled away, Sarah leaned her head against the window and watched the city blur. She wasn't crying. She was past crying. She was thinking about the anatomy of the throat. She was replaying the sensation of the cartilage popping back into place. She knew she was right. She knew she had done the only thing that could have worked. But in a world run by men like Derek and Officer Miller, being right didn't matter if you were nobody. "I should have just let her die," a dark voice whispered in her mind. "I should have just wiped the tables and looked away." But she knew that was a lie. Even in handcuffs, even with her life falling apart, Sarah knew that if she could go back 10 minutes, she would do it again. That was the curse of being a healer who wasn't allowed to heal. You couldn't turn it off. St. Jude's Medical Center was a fortress of glass and steel, the best hospital money could buy. In the VIP trauma wing, the air smelled of lavender and antiseptic. Adrian Preston paced the waiting room floor, his footsteps heavy and rhythmic. He had been pacing for 40 minutes. His jacket was discarded on a chair, his tie loosened. He looked every bit the terrified father, stripped of his corporate armor. The double doors swung open. Dr. Harrison Wells, the chief of surgery, and a man Adrian had donated millions to, walked out. He looked perplexed. He was holding a clipboard, frowning at the notes, as if they were written in an alien language. "Adrian," Dr. Wells said softly. Adrian lunged forward. "Is she alive? Tell me, Harrison." "She is alive," Dr. Wells said, a smile finally breaking through his confusion. "She's stable. She's awake. The swelling in her throat is significant, but her airway is clear. We have her on steroids and observation, but she's going to make a full recovery." Adrian let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He collapsed onto a bench, burying his face in his hands. "Thank God, thank God." "But Adrian," Dr. Wells said, sitting beside him, "we need to talk about what happened at the cafe. The paramedics told me a story that, frankly, I find hard to believe." Adrian looked up, wiping his eyes. "The waitress? The one with the brown hair? She did something. She stuck a straw in Lily's mouth." Dr. Wells nodded slowly. "Adrian, Lily suffered a post-surgical laryngeal adhesion collapse. It's incredibly rare. Effectively, a trap door closed in her throat. Even if the paramedics had arrived in 3 minutes, they would have tried to intubate her. They would have tried to push a tube down. And they would have killed her," Dr. Wells said bluntly. "Because of the angle of the collapse, a standard intubation tube would have pushed the tissue further down, sealing the airway completely. She would have suffocated before they could perform a tracheotomy." Adrian went cold. "So, the waitress? The waitress performed a blind digital reduction," Dr. Wells said, his tone full of professional awe. "She used a lever, the stirrer, to hook the tissue from behind and pull it forward. Adrian, I teach ENT surgery. I wouldn't trust half my residents to do that with a fiber-optic camera and a surgical hook. This woman did it blind, in a coffee shop, with a cocktail stick." Dr. Wells leaned in. "Who is she? Is she an ex-military medic, a surgeon from overseas?" Adrian shook his head, the realization dawning on him like a slow-moving storm. She said she was a student. Johns Hopkins. She said she dropped out." "Hopkins," Dr. Wells mused. "That explains the knowledge. But the nerve? The sheer mechanical intuition to understand the physics of the blockage without seeing it?" He shook his head. "That's not training. That's a gift. If she hadn't acted exactly when she did, and exactly how she did, Lily would be dead right now. That waitress didn't just get lucky, Adrian. She performed a miracle." Adrian stood up. The relief was washing away, replaced by a sudden, sharp spike of guilt. He remembered Derek screaming that she was crazy. He remembered the officer putting her in handcuffs. He remembered leaving her there. "Where is she?" Adrian asked, his voice low. "I don't know," Dr. Wells said. "The police were taking statements when the ambulance left." Adrian pulled out his phone. His hands were steady now. He dialed a number. "This is Preston," he barked into the phone. "Get me the police commissioner, now, and get the car around the front. We're going to the precinct." Meanwhile, in Interrogation Room B, at the 4th District Station, Sarah was sitting at a metal table. Her hands were still cuffed to the bar on the table. She had been there for 2 hours. No water, no phone call yet. Just the hum of the fluorescent light and the ache in her wrists. The door opened. Officer Miller walked in, looking smug. He threw a file on the table. "Well, Miss Bennett, things aren't looking good for you. The manager, Mr. O'Malley, has given a formal statement. He says you have a history of insubordination and that you were acting erratic and aggressive all morning. He claims you attacked the victim in a fit of hysteria." Sarah stared at him, her eyes dull. "He's lying." "Is he?" Miller sat down. "We also ran your background. Sarah Bennett dropped out of Johns Hopkins Medical School 3 years ago. Why did you drop out, Sarah? Failing grades? Drug problem?" Sarah looked down at her hands. "It wasn't grades." "Then what was it?" Miller pressed. "You snapped under pressure? Is that what happened today?" You saw a rich girl and decided to play doctor? My mother got sick, Sarah whispered. Cancer. Pancreatic. It was fast, but it wasn't cheap. I had to leave to take care of her. I spent every cent I had. I spent my tuition money. I spent my savings. And when she died, I had nothing left. I couldn't go back. I was in debt. I had to work. She looked up at Miller, tears finally welling in her eyes. I didn't snap. I learned how to save lives. And then I had to watch the only person that mattered to me die because I couldn't save her. I swore I wouldn't let that happen again. Not right in front of me. Miller paused. The rawness of her story made him hesitate. But he was a cop who liked simple narratives, and disgruntled dropout attack celebrity was a very simple narrative. That's a sad story, Miller said, standing up, but it doesn't change the fact that you assaulted a woman. We're booking you. Aggravated battery. No. A deep voice boomed from the doorway. Miller spun around. Standing in the doorway was a man in a pinstripe suit holding a briefcase. Behind him stood the police captain, looking pale and terrified. And behind the captain stood Adrian Preston. Adrian didn't look like the panicked father anymore. He looked like the titan of industry who crushed competitors for sport. His eyes were cold, hard, and fixed directly on Officer Miller. "Mr. Preston," Miller stammered. We're just processing the suspect who attacked your daughter." Attacked? Adrian walked into the room. The air seemed to get thinner, his presence consuming all the oxygen. "Is that what you call it?" Adrian walked up to the table. He looked down at Sarah. She flinched, expecting him to yell, expecting him to hit her. Instead, Adrian Preston dropped to one knee. The room went silent. The captain's jaw dropped. Miller looked like he was hallucinating. Adrian reached out and gently touched Sarah's handcuffed hands. "The doctors told me," Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. "They told me that if you had waited even 10 seconds, Lily would be gone. They told me that what you did was impossible." Sarah looked at him, her breath hitching. "I am so sorry," Adrian said, looking her in the eyes. "I left you there. I let them take you. I should have stayed." He stood up and turned to the captain. His voice changed instantly from gentle to thunderous. "Get these cuffs off her. Now." "Mr. Preston, protocol dictates," Miller started. "If those cuffs aren't off her wrists in 5 seconds," Adrian snarled, "I will sue this department into the ground. I will have your badge, Captain, and I will ensure that you, Officer Miller, act as a security guard at a landfill for the rest of your career. She is not a criminal. She is a hero." The captain scrambled forward, fumbling for keys. "Miller, uncuff her, immediately." Miller, looking like a chastised child, unlocked the cuffs. Sarah rubbed her wrists, the red marks stark against her pale skin. Adrian offered her a hand to help her stand. "Sarah, is it?" "Yes," she whispered. "Sarah," Adrian said, "my car is outside. I'm taking you to the hospital. Lily wants to see you. And after that, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about your future and about a certain manager at the Gilded Bean." Sarah stood up, her legs shaky. She looked at the open door. For the first time in 3 years, the weight on her chest felt a little lighter. "I'd like that," she said. The ride to St. Jude's Hospital was silent, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of a luxury sedan, insulating its passengers from the chaotic world outside. Sarah sat in the back seat, the soft leather feeling alien against her uniform, which still bore the coffee stains of the morning rush. Adrian Preston sat beside her, reviewing documents on a tablet. He hadn't spoken much since they left the station, only asking if she needed water or food. He seemed to be calculating, his mind working through a problem that Sarah couldn't see. When they arrived at the hospital, they didn't go through the main entrance. They took a private elevator to the top floor, the executive wing. The hallway was quiet, lined with modern art and plush carpeting. Adrian stopped outside room 501. He turned to Sarah. "Lily is awake," he said, his voice softening. "She's been asking for you. But before we go in, I need to know something, Sarah." Sarah straightened her back. "Yes, Mr. Preston?" "Why didn't you tell the police about Derek?" Adrian asked, his eyes searching hers. "When I walked in, you were defending your medical actions, but you weren't defending your character against his lies. You looked resigned." Sarah looked at the floor. "Mr. Preston, men like Derek O'Malley exist everywhere. I've learned that when you have no money and no power, the truth is just a version of events that nobody believes. I was saving my energy for the fight I could win, keeping my medical record clean, rather than the one I knew I'd lose." Adrian's jaw tightened. "You won't lose any more. Not today." He opened the door. Lily Preston was sitting up in bed, looking pale but undeniably alive. An IV line ran into her arm, and her neck was bandaged, but her eyes were bright. When she saw Sarah, her face lit up with a mixture of recognition and tears. "It's you," Lily whispered, her voice raspy. Sarah walked to the bedside, her nurse instinct taking over. She automatically checked the monitor readout. Heart rate steady, oxygen saturation 99%. "Hi, Lily. How does the throat feel?" "Like I swallowed a cactus," Lily managed a weak smile. "But I can breathe. I remember looking up. Everyone was screaming. My dad was screaming. But you were the only one who looked calm. You looked like you knew me." "I knew what was hurting you," Sarah said gently. "Dr. Wells told me what you did." Lily reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "He said you broke the rules to save me. He said anyone else would have let me die because they were too scared of being sued." Adrian stepped forward, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. "She did more than that, Lily. She risked her freedom." Lily looked at her father, then back at Sarah. "Thank you. I don't know how I can ever pay you back." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "You don't have to pay me back. Seeing you breathing is enough." "Really?" Adrian cleared his throat. "Actually, Sarah, that's not entirely true. While you were in the car, I made some calls. I spoke to the Dean of Medicine at Johns Hopkins. He's an old friend." Sarah froze. The blood drained from her face. "Mr. Preston, please, I can't go back. The tuition, the debt." "The debt is gone," Adrian said simply. Sarah blinked. "What?" "I bought your debt," Adrian stated, as if he were discussing buying a sandwich. "All of it. The medical bills for your mother, the outstanding student loans, the credit card debt you accrued trying to keep the lights on. It's paid. You have a zero balance as of 20 minutes ago." Sarah's knees went weak. She grabbed the bed rail for support. I don't understand." "And," Adrian continued, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This is a letter of reinstatement. I explained the situation to the dean, the leave of absence for family tragedy, the financial hardship, and I told him about the procedure you performed today. Dr. Wells also sent over his notes. The dean agrees that it would be a crime against humanity to keep a mind like yours pouring coffee." Adrian pressed the envelope into her hand. "You start next semester. Full scholarship. The Preston Family Foundation will cover your living expenses, your books, and your housing. You will never have to worry about money again. You just have to worry about becoming the best surgeon this country has ever seen." Sarah looked at the envelope, Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Tears, hot and fast, finally spilled over. This was the dream she had buried. This was the life she had mourned. "Why?" she choked out. "Why would you do this?" Adrian looked at his daughter, who was smiling through her own tears. "Because you gave me my daughter back," Adrian said, his voice breaking. "And because I hate wasted potential. But Sarah, there is one condition." Sarah wiped her eyes, looking up. "Anything." Adrian's face hardened. The cold, ruthless CEO look returned, but this time it wasn't directed at her. It was a weapon she could use. "You have to go back to the Gilded Bean one last time," Adrian said. "Derek O'Malley and that girl, Tiffany, tried to destroy you to cover their own incompetence. They humiliated you. They had you arrested." Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "I don't just want to fix your future, Sarah. I want to fix your past. I want you to walk back in there, and I want you to watch what happens when the world realizes they messed with the wrong waitress. Are you ready for that?" Sarah thought about Derek's sneer. She thought about Tiffany laughing as the handcuffs clicked. She straightened her spine. The exhausted waitress was gone. The medical student was back. "Yes," Sarah said. "I'm ready." It was 8 a.m. the next morning. The Gilded Bean was bustling. The rumour mill was in overdrive. Derek O'Malley was holding court behind the counter, looking surprisingly cheerful for a man whose cafe had been a crime scene the day before. He had spun the narrative expertly. To the customers, Derek was the tragic hero who had tried to maintain order while a mentally unstable employee went rogue. It was terrifying, Derek was saying to a regular Mrs. Gable as he poured her espresso. "I mean, we try to help people, you know. I gave Sarah a chance when no one else would. And this is how she repays me? Attacking a client? I just thank God the police got here in time to take her away before she did more damage." Tiffany was nearby, restocking napkins. She looked nervous. "Derek, maybe we should stop talking about it. What if Mr. Preston comes back?" "Please," Derek scoffed. "Preston is busy with his lawyers. He's going to sue Sarah, not us. We're the victims here, Tiff. We're the ones who had to witness the horror. If anything, corporate is going to give me a bonus for handling the crisis so well." The bell above the door chimed. "Welcome to the Gilded Bee," Derek started, his customer service smile plastered on. The words died in his throat. Sarah Bennett walked in. She wasn't wearing her uniform. She was wearing a sharp, navy blue blazer, tailored trousers, and heels. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, professional bun. She didn't look like the girl who scrubbed the floors. She looked like she owned the block. The cafe went silent. The regulars recognized her. The whispers started immediately. "You!" Derek slammed the frothing pitcher down. "You have some nerve showing your face here. I told you you're fired. You're trespassing. I'm calling the police again." Sarah didn't flinch. She walked to the center of the room, standing exactly where Lily had collapsed. She looked at Derek with a calmness that was more terrifying than any shout. "You can call them, Derek," Sarah said, her voice clear and carrying to every corner of the shop. "But I don't think they're coming for me this time." "Get out!" Derek shouted, coming around the counter. He wanted to intimidate her, to make her shrink away like she always used to. "You're a psycho. You almost killed a girl." "Actually," a deep voice boomed from the doorway, "she saved her." The door swung open again. Adrian Preston walked in, but he wasn't alone. He was flanked by two men in dark suits holding briefcases, and a woman in a severe grey suit holding a clipboard. Derek froze. His face went from red to a sickly shade of white. "Mr. Preston! Sir, I didn't know you were coming. I was just telling this trespasser to leave so she wouldn't upset the clientele." "She's not a trespasser," Adrian said, walking up to stand beside Sarah. He looked at the room, addressing the stunned customers. "For those of you who were here yesterday, you witnessed a miracle. My daughter is alive today, solely because Sarah Bennett had the medical expertise and the courage to act when everyone else, including the manager of this establishment, froze." A gasp went through the room. Mrs. Gable covered her mouth. Adrian turned his cold gaze to Derek. "You, on the other hand, Mr. O'Malley, lied to the police. You claimed she was untrained. You claimed she was aggressive. You tried to have a hero thrown in a cell to cover up the fact that your cafe didn't even have a functioning first aid kit." Derek stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Sir, I was protecting the brand. It was a liability issue. I didn't know she was a doctor." "She was a top-tier medical student," Adrian snapped. "And you treated her like dirt." Adrian gestured to the woman with the clipboard. "This is Ms. Klein, my head of acquisitions. As of 9:03 a.m. this morning, Preston Dynamics has purchased the parent company that owns the Gilded Bean franchise rights for this entire state." Derek's knees buckled. He grabbed the counter for support. You bought the company?" "I bought the building, too," Adrian added casually. "I own the espresso machine you're leaning on. I own the apron you're wearing. I own the very floor you are standing on." Adrian turned to Sarah. "Ms. Bennett, as the representative of the new ownership, would you like to handle the personnel changes?" Sarah stepped forward. She looked at Derek. For years this man had belittled her, stolen her tips, made her work overtime without pay, and mocked her poverty. She looked at Tiffany, who was shrinking into the corner, terrified. Sarah looked at Derek, and she didn't feel anger. She felt pity. He was a small man in a small kingdom, and the walls had just fallen down. "Derek," Sarah said softly. "Sarah, please," Derek whimpered. "I have a mortgage. I have a car payment. I was just stressed. We can work this out. I can be assistant manager. I know the inventory." "You compromised patient safety," Sarah said, her voice clinical and detached. "You prioritized liability over a human life, and then you bore false witness to a police officer." Sarah looked him in the eye. "You're fired, Derek, effective immediately. Pack your personal belongings. You have 5 minutes before security escorts you off the premises." "And you?" Sarah turned to Tiffany. Tiffany burst into tears. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I was scared. He made me say it." Sarah paused. She knew Tiffany was weak, not evil. But weakness had consequences. "You're not fired, Tiffany," Sarah said. Tiffany sobbed in relief. "Oh, thank you, thank you." "But you're back on probation," Sarah continued, "and you're going to undergo mandatory first aid and emergency response training. If you fail the certification, you're out. Do you understand?" Yes, I understand." Tiffany nodded vigorously. Derek was still standing there, stunned. One of the men in suits stepped forward. "Mr. O'Malley, the 5 minutes has started." Derek looked around the cafe. The customers were staring at him with mix of disgust and fascination. He stripped off his apron, threw it on the floor, and marched towards the door, muttering curses. As he pushed the door open, no one said a word. The bell chimed, signaling the end of his reign. Adrian turned to Sarah and smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile. How did that feel? Sarah took a deep breath. The smell of coffee, usually a trigger for her stress, suddenly smelled rich and inviting. "It felt like closure," Sarah said. "Good," Adrian said. "Now let's go. You have a semester to prepare for, and I believe Dr. Wells wants to introduce you to his team at the hospital. He thinks you might be able to teach the residents a thing or two about emergency airways." Sarah looked at the apron on the floor, the symbol of her years of hiding. She stepped over it. "I'm ready, Mr. Preston." As they walked out of the cafe, Sarah didn't look back. The customers watched her go, the waitress who became a legend. 1 year had passed since the incident at the Gilded Bean. The auditorium at Johns Hopkins University was a sea of hushed anticipation. It was the annual Future of Medicine Gala, a prestigious event where the brightest minds in the medical field gathered to honor innovation, resilience, and academic excellence. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn back. The spotlight hit the podium. Sarah Bennett sat in the front row. She wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a crisp, white lab coat with the university emblem embroidered on the pocket. Her hair was clean and styled, her face fuller and healthier than it had been 12 months ago. But her eyes were the same, watchful, intelligent, and carrying the weight of experience. Next to her sat Adrian Preston. The CEO had become more than just a benefactor. He was a mentor and a father figure. On her other side sat Lily Preston. Lily looked radiant, her color restored, her laughter easy. The faint thin scar on her neck was the only physical reminder of the day she almost died. Dr. Wells, the man who had vouched for Sarah, stepped up to the microphone. "Medicine," Dr. Wells began, his voice echoing through the hall, "is often taught from textbooks. We learn anatomy, pathology, and pharmacology. We memorize protocols. But there is one thing we cannot teach in a classroom." He paused, scanning the audience. "We cannot teach instinct. We cannot teach the courage to act when the world tells you to freeze. We cannot teach the kind of vision that sees a solution where others see only a dead end." Dr. Wells smiled and looked down at the front row. "A year ago, a young woman was told she was nothing. She was told to stay in her place. She was told that her voice didn't matter. But when life hung in the balance, she didn't listen to the critics. She listened to the patient. It is my distinct honor to present the Dean's Award for Clinical Excellence to the student who achieved the highest marks in the history of our surgical rotation program, Sarah Bennett." The room exploded. The applause wasn't polite, it was thunderous. Students, professors, and visiting dignitaries stood up. Sarah felt the blood rush to her cheeks. She stood up, her legs trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming magnitude of the moment. She walked up the stairs to the stage. As she shook Dr. Wells's hand and took the heavy glass trophy, she looked out at the crowd. She saw faces she recognized. Old professors who had welcomed her back with open arms, new friends who respected her not for her story, but for her skill. And then she saw him. Standing in the back of the auditorium, near the exit doors, was a man in a delivery uniform. He was holding a stack of catering trays. It was Derek O'Malley. He looked older, tired. The arrogance that had once defined his posture was gone, replaced by a slump of defeat. He was working for a catering company now, delivering food to the very people he used to sneer at. Their eyes locked across the vast room. Sarah didn't glare. She didn't smirk. She simply looked at him, acknowledging his presence, and then she looked away. He was a ghost from a past life, a footnote in her biography. He no longer held any power over her. She saw Derek lower his head and slip out the door, disappearing into the shadows where he belonged. Sarah leaned into the microphone. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "A year ago, I was in handcuffs because I broke the rules to save a life. I learned that day that titles don't save people. Uniforms don't save people. Hands save people. Care saves people." She looked down at Adrian and Lily. "I accept this award not for myself, but as a reminder that the person serving your coffee, or cleaning your floor, or parking your car might just be the person who holds your life in their hands one day. See them, respect them, because you never know who is hiding behind the apron. The applause started again, louder this time. Later that evening, at the reception, the atmosphere was festive. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne, a job Sarah knew too well. She made a point to thank every single one of them by name, looking them in the eye. Lily pulled Sarah aside onto the balcony. The city lights of Baltimore twinkled below them. "You were amazing up there," Lily said softly. "I was terrified," Sarah admitted, laughing. "I'd rather intubate a trauma patient than give a speech." Lily reached into her purse. "I have something for you, a graduation present, a little early." She handed Sarah a small rectangular box. Sarah opened it. Inside lay a stethoscope, but it wasn't a standard one. The metal was engraved with a gold filigree, and on the chest piece there was an inscription. Sarah squinted to read it in the dim light. "To Dr. Bennett, the waitress who served me a second chance. Love, Lily." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. She ran her thumb over the cool metal. "Lily, this is too much." "It's not enough," Lily said, her voice fierce. "My dad gave you a scholarship. That was money. This is a promise. You're going to be a surgeon, Sarah. You're going to save thousands of people, and every time you use this, I want you to remember that you're not an imposter. You belong here." Sarah put the stethoscope around her neck. It felt heavy, grounding. It felt like it belonged there. Adrian Preston stepped out onto the balcony, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "Interrupting a moment?" he asked with a smile. "Just a thank you," Lily said, wiping a tear from her cheek. Adrian looked at Sarah. He looked at the doctor she was becoming, and he remembered the fierce, desperate woman in the coffee shop who had defied him to save his child. "You know, Sarah," Adrian said, leaning against the railing, "I've made a lot of investments in my life. Real estate, technology, stocks, billions of dollars moving around the world." He raised his glass to her. "But investing in you? That was the best deal I ever made." Sarah smiled, looking from the billionaire to the girl who was now her sister in spirit. She looked out at the city skyline, a world of infinite possibilities. She wasn't the invisible waitress anymore. She wasn't the girl with the stained apron. She was Sarah Bennett, MD in training. She touched the stethoscope around her neck, took a deep breath of the cool night air, and finally, after years of holding it in, she let herself exhale. "I'm just getting started," Sarah said. And she was. And that is the incredible story of Sarah Bennett. It's a reminder that heroism doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it wears a stained apron and comfortable shoes. It challenges us to look at the people around us, the servers, the cleaners, the workers, and realize that everyone has a story and everyone has potential we can't see. Sarah risked her freedom to do what was right, proving that true authority comes from competence and compassion, not from a title or a manager's badge. What would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes? Would you have risked going to jail to save someone's life, even if they were yelling at you to stop? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another dramatic story like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.